So Debian 12 was released over the weekend, and I always like to test new versions of Linux on a real working computer. So in this video, I'm going to install Debian 12, known as Bookworm, onto an older laptop. How old? I believe it's about 9 years old. I'm in the BIOS of the system right now. And so this is a Toshiba satellite, I believe 9 years old. And if you look here, I have the specs courtesy of laptopping.com. And so it's an E45 B4200. If you can find one of these on eBay, it's usually a pretty good deal if you can get them cheap. Also the B4100. I have several of these and they work pretty well. But you can see here, this has a Core i5-4210. Not a very powerful CPU. It's like 1.7 gigahertz, and it comes with 6 gigabytes of RAM. I've upgraded that, as you can see in the BIOS here, to 8 gigs of RAM. I had a little additional DDR lying around. And I also changed out the drive and put in a solid state drive. You can see a 120 gig drive in there. So the specs on this, if you're looking for detailed specifications, here they are at Dynabook. For this particular system, again, the E45 B4200. That's what I'm installing to this laptop here. And so the reason I'm in the BIOS is because I want to make sure it's configured properly and ready to work with the new installation of Debian. So if we take a look here and go down to Advanced, you'll see we have two options that we have to check. The first one is the boot order. And so if we go to the boot order, you'll see I've already configured this for USB first, and that's because I'm going to boot off of a USB flash drive. And then the other option here is the system configuration. You have to make sure your boot mode is correct. And so you have two options, UEFI or CSM. It depends on what you're installing and how you're installing it, but in this case, we need UEFI boot. So those things are configured already, and I've already downloaded the installation ISO, and so you can get that from debian.org/distrib. And the beautiful thing about Debian is it's known as the universal operating system, meaning you can install it on just about anything, and there's lots of different installation options. I'm installing from a net install. And you do that if you have an internet connection or if you plan to have an internet connection. If you don't have an internet connection, you could do a complete installation image. But I already grabbed the net install, so I went to download an installation image and I selected AMD 64. This laptop has an Intel chip, so AMD 64 is what we'd want. And that's the default network installation ISO image. And I already burned that to a flash drive using Balena Etcher. That's what I usually use in Linux. And my main system here that I'm working on is Linux. So I use that to burn the flash drive, and it's already inserted into the laptop. So it's all set up and ready to go, and we can escape out of here and reboot and go ahead and start the installation of Debian 12. Okay, give that a moment. There we go. And it comes up right away with the install options. So let's go through this, and we'll go through step by step. And I haven't installed this on this computer yet, so we'll see what happens, see if it works well. My goal is to make Debian work, have the GNOME desktop, and be able to use this as a workstation and also be able to connect to the internet. Okay, so let's get on with it now. And we're going to take a look here. We have several options. The first is graphical install. And so you can do this with a mouse if you want. So point and click, or you can just do text-based install. That's what I usually do for server installations, where it's keyboard only. Then we have some advanced options. If we go to that, we'll see graphical expert install, rescue mode, and automated install, which can make things faster for you. So some different options here, but I'm going to do the step-by-step install. And then you have those 3 options in text mode, keyboard only as well. Okay, we also have accessible dark contrast installer menu. If we press enter for that, you'll see everything is black and white. You have some different options for that as well. So this is better for some people. And so if this is no good for them, the high contrast or dark contrast is there for you. And it's better if you just like dark mode. And you also have install with speech synthesis. So you can hear what's happening as well during the installation to help you out. But I'm going to do this top option, graphical install, and we'll press enter for that now and get started. Okay, so again, we could use the mouse if we want to. We have the mouse option because we're doing graphical install, or you could use the keyboard if you want. So I have this set to English, and that's what I want. We could just press enter to continue. United States is my location. I'm going to continue for that as well, just pressing enter. And keyboard, American English, I'm in the United States, so that's what I want. And enter to continue. That's going to detect and mount the installation media that we're working with, the USB flash drive. And take a look at the rest of the system. So it's loading components from the installation media. And I'll just fast forward here to the next step. Okay, it saw the network adapters for this system, and there are 2. There's a wired network adapter, which it's calling EMP3S0. That's a Realtek wired gigabit connection. And then it sees the wireless Intel device. That's a wireless 3160. So it sees both of those, so that's good. I'm going to use the wireless as the primary network interface because I don't have this physically connected right now. So we'll go with the wireless and then go to continue, and that'll go ahead and configure the network. At this point, I'm going to select the network that I want to connect to, and hopefully this one I can connect to. So I'm going to hit that now with WPA2 PSK. Press enter, and it's going to need the passphrase, so I'm going to type that in now. Okay, so I typed in the password, and it succeeded. It connected successfully to my wireless access point, and so I wanted to make sure that this would connect in a wireless fashion, and I'm leaving the wired connection disconnected for now, but I will connect that later. I do have DHCP servers on both networks, so it should automatically get an IP address either way. And so it should connect now through wireless and be able to pick up all the rest of the installation files from the internet. And so now it's asking for a host name, and I'm going to type in the host name I want to use. That's going to be Smoggy. And domain name, I'm not using one for this particular system. We could always add that later. So just going to press enter for that. And then set up users and passwords. All right, so I need a root password for the root account. And we'll type that in and enter it again. So the Debian installation is a little bit different than the, say, Ubuntu or Fedora installations. Here we actually do have the root account, and we configure it right here. So a little bit different than some other distros, but we'll press continue for that. And it wants a new username, so I'll put that in now. Say dpro, leave it as that, and give that a password. Okay, good. So the users section is done. dpro will be the user account that I log in as by default, but the root account will be there also as the super user, as the administrative account. Configuring the clock, we're in Eastern time zone, so enter for that. And now we can get to the disk configuration. Okay, so for this, I want to select use the entire disk. I don't want anything else on this drive, so we're going to have Debian 12 inhabit the entire solid-state drive and press enter. And it's going to say, well, which drive do you want to use? I'm not interested in messing with the flash drive because that's where my ISO image is. It's this 120 gig, the solid state drive. That's where I want to install to. So we'll press enter for that. And it's asking to configure the partitioning. Now, for new users, you might put all the files in one partition, but generally what I like to do is at the very least separate the /home partition, and that's because that has all of the user account information in it. And so if you need to reinstall later, you could reinstall but keep the home partition because it is separate. So that's something I usually like to do. So we'll press continue for that. And it's telling us that any data currently on the logical volumes will be removed. I do want to do that. I want this to be basically like a fresh new drive, fresh new installation. So we'll say yes and next. And so here we have the overview for our partitioning. And remember, this is just a 120 gig drive. So what it's doing by default is it's setting the home partition to 88 gigs because that's usually where most of the data is going to go to. And then we have the / or root partition at 30 gig. And both of those are ext4 by default. You could change these. You could modify the sizes of these, but I'm fine with that. The 30 gig should be fine for the operating system, and then the 88.5 gig for the home partition and all the users. So that looks good, and we can go to finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Sometimes it's a good idea to take a screenshot of that also in case you make a mistake or you want to go back and modify it. But this is indeed what we want with these partitions. So I'm going to say yes to that and enter for continue. So far, so good. Now, there are so many ways to automate the process, but I wanted to do this as a step-by-step process to see if everything will actually function properly on this laptop. But keep in mind, lots of ways to automate this. And if you're doing this on your own, I'm sure it'll go much faster because you'll be just going through the questions much faster. So now it's installing the base system, and we'll fast forward till it's done with that. Okay, so like I say, so far so good. It looks like it's installing pretty well and pretty quickly as well on this system. So we're going to continue on here. Now it's stating we need to configure the package manager. United States is what I want. If you're in a different country, you would select that. Quite often, if you are doing an internet install, it'll know automatically because that's basing that on your internet connection. If you are doing a non-internet install, doing a full installation, then you may have to select some of these things. But I'm going to select United States and enter. And then it's asking which archive mirror do you want to go to. Some are better than others, but generally I'll just go with deb.debian.org, and that's what we'll do for this system. Press enter for that. I'm not using an HTTP proxy in this particular wireless network, so I'm going to leave that blank and continue. And that's going to go ahead and configure the package manager, which is apt, and we'll fast forward till that's done. And at this point, we get to the select and install software section. So this is also known as task selection or task cell. And this is where we're going to select what we want to run on this system. And that's one of the reasons I'm not doing an automated install. I may want to select certain things in here. But before that, we have the popularity contest. I'm going to say no to this because this is really just a test system. I don't want to anonymously supply any statistics for this particular computer. These types of systems can kind of skew the results. So I'm going to say no for that and continue. There's your task cell. And so at this point, we're going to select what we want. You have a wide selection of different desktops. And if you look here, you can see Debian 12 ships with several desktop environments. GNOME 43, KDE Plasma 5.27, and then some lightweight desktops, Mate, XFCE. So you have a lot of options here. The one that I want to use is just GNOME. So I'm going to leave Debian desktop environment and GNOME selected. And we'll go down to SSH server. I want that. And we'll leave standard system utilities set up as well. I don't need a web server or anything like that. So I really didn't modify much. I'm just adding the SSH server and going to continue. There we go. That's going to go ahead and install 1,400 different files. So we're going to pause here and be back when that is done. Okay, it finished with the packages, and now it's installing the Grub bootloader, which is super important and helpful to us with configurations and troubleshooting and so on. And it'll go ahead and finish the installation. Now, the package install took about 4.5 minutes on this system. And it does say now installation is complete. But I did fast forward through that. It was about 4.5 minutes of packages. And if you take a look over here, you'll see that the new release has over 11,000 new packages, while only 6,000 or so have been removed as obsolete. So we're netting about 5,000 packages for this new version of Debian with a total count of 64,419 packages. That's a whole ton, more than previous versions. Overall disk usage, 365 gigabytes. And it's made up of 1.34 billion lines of code. Fantastic. So it gives you an idea of the breadth of Debian. Pretty powerful for sure. But now you can see that we are done with the install. So that is awesome. And it's making sure that we remove our installation media. That would be my USB flash drive, which I'm disconnecting right now. And we can just press continue to reboot. So let's see how that does now. Press enter, finish the installation, and reboot. Come on, Debian. Debian 12, let's go. Again, first time I've installed this. And here we go. We should be good with Debian. We'll let that go on its own. Blue of my chair almost matches the blue background exactly. Amazing. Okay, going to be a little bit hard to see some of this with this resolution, but it looks like it is working properly. Lots of green OKs, so it looks good. All right, so I had to log in and set the HDMI output to mirror the screen so that we could record it. So you didn't see the actual login there, but now we're at the welcome screen and we can go through this. Just do a next on that and next on typing. This is all the standard GNOME stuff. Privacy, I'm going to turn off location services because I'm paranoid. Go to next for that. I'm not going to connect any online accounts, so skip. And all done. Start using Debian GNU Linux. So a little hard to see. The resolution is 1920 by 1080, but it's at the standard scale. So we can modify that. We'll go and press the super user key to bring up the search and go to settings. Open that up. And you can see this is where I set the multiple displays. I set it to mirror so that you can see it on your screen. But I'm going to set the scale to 200%, so it'll be nice and big and easier for you to see. Keep changes. All right, maybe a little too big. Some windows might get chopped off and hard to work with. But there's a way around that. We could use GNOME tweaks and modify it that way. So, for example, on my main system here, if you take a look, if I was to bring up a terminal here and run GNOME tweaks, you can go to appearance, go to fonts, and then change the scaling factor, and you have a little bit more wiggle room. It's a little bit more configurable than just 100 or 200%. We could do 1.25 or 1.5 or 1.75. So we could always add that to our system. But let's go back to that guy now and let's take a look around. Let's see what we see. Close out of settings here And so this is the new version of GNOME, GNOME 43 within Debian 12, or relatively new as of the recording of this video. So it looks good. If we click up here, we'll see that we are connected to unknown network. That's the name of the network. We've got Bluetooth running as well. I don't really need that. We could disable that if necessary. And so all the GNOME controls here, a little bit different look if you're used to GNOME version 3 or 30, if you will. But it looks like we do have everything we need. Let's open up Firefox and see if we can connect out to the internet. Fire starts here. Indeed, we can. And we'll go to browse.tech. See how quick it brings that up. Okay, good. Good stuff. So websites work. Go to the search again, and we'll open up the terminal. All right, and there we go. dpro, that's my username, @smoggy, computer name. Looks good. And let's take a look at our network connections. All right, so we have the wireless connection, but I don't have a wired connection just yet. So let's connect a patch cable right now. I'm doing that this moment here. Okay, that's connected to a switch. You can't see what I'm doing, but it is connected. And let's run this command again. Boom, we are good. ENP3S0, that's the wired connection, and it automatically picked up an IP from my DHCP server on my LAN, on this particular LAN at least. 10.42.48.10 is its IP, and we have an IP address with the wireless network as well. Good. And so that was seamless. I mean, it saw all the hardware, and I mean, it should, because honestly, this is, you know, a 9-year-old laptop. But the whole point of Linux is to be able to run on anything, new or old. And newer versions of Debian and Ubuntu and Fedora are seeing so much more hardware today, new or old. And so in this case, it should definitely see it. This is common stuff, and it's been around forever. But the point is that it sees it well, and it's working flawlessly, and it's pretty quick also. We went to websites, and it looks like everything's running pretty quickly, pretty well. Various apps open at the same time. Looks like there's no real lag here of any sort. So I'm very happy with Debian 12 so far. Let's run the top command and take a look at what we have here. Okay, total memory is 8 gigabytes available, 5,800. Okay, that's better than I would get with Ubuntu or Fedora out of the box, and that's because Debian just has a smaller footprint in general, but that's pretty good. For an 8 gig RAM system, it's doing pretty well here, and Firefox isn't really doing very much. Let's open up a video. Here we go. We'll go to this page here and run this video real quick. And so the video is running. And we'll go back and leave that running and go back to our top and see how well that does. And we can see that really its isolated web is 10%, Firefox 10%. Not bad for our CPUs. Let's take a look at all the CPUs. Really not so bad right now. We've got a lot of CPU power left. So we can watch videos in this and do other work on this Debian system. We could do it all day with this computer and do really a lot more. So I'm pretty happy with the performance of Debian 12 so far on this laptop. So essentially, I mean, it installed without a hitch, and it installed pretty quickly. Really, with me talking, it took about 20 minutes, but you could probably get it done in 12, 15 minutes max. And there really wasn't a hitch to that installation. It all went very well, and it's running very well now. And it sees all the hardware. Audio works, speakers work, keyboard works. It's all good. So this is a great, great way to, one, recycle old laptops and give them new life, because an operating system like this is going to run 3, 4, 5 times better, more efficiently than, say, Windows on the same computer. And so again, you can run Debian or really any version of Linux on these older systems, breathe new life into those systems, and use them for testing or labbing or educational purposes, or perhaps even as a daily driver. As we're showing here, we've got video playing, we've got top running, we've got a bunch of stuff here. And so we can definitely have a lot of things happening at the same time without using too much CPU power or too much RAM. So I like it a lot, and Debian 12 seems to be a success. Definitely check out Debian 12. This is the release notes for it. And then if you want to install Debian, just go to debian.org/distrib, and you can install it from a lot of different sources in a lot of different ways. And again, it's like the universal operating system where you could install to many different platforms. And that's really the key with this. All right, so that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.